Welcome to the Exploring Careers podcast, where we interview people in different fields and help you discover your path. I'm Lamont, your host, and today I'm talking to Ian, who is a biologist with over 12 years of experience, currently working in the fisheries field. In this episode, we touch on topics such as protecting fish habitats and general career advice. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, today I have a special guest, Ian Matchett, who is a biologist with over 12 years experience, currently working in the fisheries field. Welcome, Ian, to the show.
Hey, Lamont. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you. First of all, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm a regulatory biologist with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, or DFO. It used to be called the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So even though the full name has changed, we still go by DFO as a shorthand.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited to have you on because in Vancouver, fishing is such a big industry. And we kind of, I feel like we pride ourselves in the sustainable fishing. I'm thinking about like the Ocean-wise labels in restaurants. So I want to get more insight into someone who kind of works directly in that field. So to start off, coming from, like, I'm a software engineer, so coming from software, I don't know anything about what a biologist does from day to day. Could you share about something about how a standard day looks like for you?
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, to start, I would say just something as general as biologist. It could mean anything. You could work in a lab. You could work on a computer doing stats. It's such a massive discipline from, it's a pretty wide spectrum. For me personally, so as a fisheries biologist, in the past, I've been more involved in sort of field programs and actually going out and looking at fish and collecting fish and assessing habitat and that kind of thing. But since I've been working for the government, it's more of a desktop sort of role. Yeah, and I guess to get right into it, it's what we do is when somebody in the public or a business wants to have some form of development that involves working in or near water, they would want to submit an application to us, and we would either review what they're proposing and tell them whether we think it's going to affect fish habitat or fish themselves. And if it is, they have to go through a separate process, and it turns into a whole other beast. So essentially what I'm doing day to day is reviewing these proposed projects and then trying to assess how much of an impact they might have on fish and fish habitat. And then, yeah, every so often we're starting to do this more now. It was obviously not happening as much during COVID, but now we're actually getting out more physically in the field to go and look at things. And once these files have been reviewed and yeah, there's lots of reason to go back and monitor them periodically and that type of thing. So it's mostly office based these days, but hopefully getting back to a bit more field and time outside and out of the office.
Cool. Yeah, so there's a mix of both then in the field and in the office.
That's right. I think what we strive for is a good balance.
Yeah, that's a nice variety. And it seems very important to have businesses consult you guys for building structures right near in BC. There's so many different salmon habitats and other fisheries, other fishes going down the rivers. I always see them when I'm walking down the park. There's all these signs saying, "Hey, there's a fish habitat. Just be careful what to do there."
Yeah, it's right. It's such a it's the lifeblood of the economy and a lot of the cultural traditions in BC, and it's something that needs a lot of work to be protected. So it's no wonder that we see signs all over the place warning people to be careful for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm. Next, could you share with us a memorable project for you? Perhaps one that was maybe challenging or you felt inspired or really liked?
Yeah, I wouldn't, maybe nothing current, but I would say for me, the most memorable projects that I've worked on were, so prior to working in government, I was working as an environmental consultant. So that I touched on this earlier, but that would be when a company would hire you as a consultant to go in, maybe assess the fish habitat, or actually physically sample fish, maybe do toxicity testing or a number of different things. And then we would actually work as the intermediary between that person and the government. So now it's a little bit different because I'm working on the government side. But when you're the person who's physically doing that field work, it often involves travel to these really remote and isolated sites, whether it would be a mine or any other kind of number of industries. Because of how remote those areas would be, it would often be staying there for a long period of time where, and sometimes I've been up in some remote sites for maybe a month where you're just slugging it out 12 hours a day, wading through streams or boating up and down streams, processing anything from minnows this small to sturgeon this big.
Wow.
It's so I would say the memorable project are those ones where it just turned into a bit of a marathon, where it's more about survival than it is about enjoying yourself. And yeah, it's good. Those are the ones where you feel like you really earned it, and yeah, need a little bit of rest and recovery after them too.
So next, what are some things you really like or are passionate about in your career? And is there anything you dislike or you think could be improved upon in your field from your experience?
Things I'm passionate about. I mean, being a strong supporter of conservation and being an environmentalist, I think working on that side of the government, trying to protect the things we were just talking about earlier, that's something I'm passionate about. So that really fits the bill. Also, like we mentioned earlier, it's a little bit more office based these days compared to out in the field, but hopefully that'll change. So that's one thing I'm hoping for a bit more in the future. Um, and so yeah, that would, you probably file that one under dislikes, but it's really not that big of a deal. I think it's, yeah, comes with the territory. It's sort of a necessary part of the job, is that, and in certain times of the year it's a bit more busy than others when we get a lot of these files to review. It's sort of based on weather and when, so there's certain fish windows where it's more permissible to work in and around water. So typically when developers know when those things are happening, so we get a lot more files than usual. So we're kind of coming to the end of that time of the year now, though, so it should be lightening up a little bit, and then getting into the fall.
Okay. So now I want to move on to how you got into the field. So I noticed I was browsing your LinkedIn earlier, and I noticed that you went to University of Is it Guelph?
Guelph, right?
Yeah. So I remember I spent a few months not too far away in Waterloo. You must have had some brutal winters there. I'm not used to them because I'm from Vancouver. Could you walk us through your career path?
Yeah, sure thing. It's a good question because it's been a pretty roundabout one. When I went to Guelph, when I started there, my plan was actually to pursue a career as a physiotherapist. So the first couple of years of my degree, I was actually in human kinetics, and I quite enjoyed it. But I think the problem was it was a very specific program where there was little room for any electives or any courses you wanted to take just out of interest. So eventually I kind of realized it wasn't for me, and then I sort of branched out a little bit. Still could use a lot of the credits I had in sciences, and I started to take a lot more courses in aquatics or fisheries biology, and just sort of moved a bit away from the sort of human based biology and more into the environment. And yeah, I guess following after finishing my degree and taking a couple of years to just sort of be a ski bum and kick around a mountain town, I found my way into, I started trying to pursue a career in consulting, and it seemed like a good match because it was a chance to use the knowledge I had gained through a degree in biology, but also, an appreciation for being someone who grew up fishing and spending a lot of time on the lake. So it seemed like a natural progression, just kind of like collide all those skills together and all those interests. And yeah, I was at a time in my life where I just really wanted to sink my teeth into something, and it worked out really well because that's when I started doing all this field work. And was, when you're younger, you're probably a bit more keen on the adventure and spending all this time away and out in the bush. So it it was great, and then yeah, it turned into a full on career once you start to get away from just the field based stuff. And yeah, kind of through that, I had been working back in Ontario, but then I managed to get a transfer out here to BC and never really looked back. And yeah, I continued working in consulting up until just last summer, and that's when I made the switch over to government, working for Fisheries and Oceans Canada, and pretty happy. Yeah, no real complaints. It's been a great transition. It's sort of a different work environment than consulting is. Consulting is a bit more higher paced, and um, yeah, there's a little bit more stress involved. I think this is not without its stresses, but it's sort of a different work environment. It's been great so far.
That's an interesting path from switching majors and then now moving to BC. It's you made the right decision by moving to BC.
Agreed. I can't debate that one. That's right.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian. So next, I want to ask for someone who may not be sure if this is the right career path for them. Could you explain a bit about what kind of person this career path would be a good fit for, and what kind of what personality traits or what things have helped you and your colleagues be successful as a biologist?
I mean, I think at the base of having a genuine interest in conservation and a love of natural ecosystems is a good starting point, because at the end of the day, I think that's why most people get into this industry. You want to protect those types of things. And I think having a strong sense of personal ethics is important too, because a lot of the time it does come down to your professional judgment, really. And in that instance, you want to make sure that you have those sound ethics, so you make sure you're making the right decisions for the right reasons. So I think those are really important things. I think, especially when it comes to the fieldwork portion, it's really important to have a strong work ethic, because, like I was saying, spending a month with no days off out in the field, it can really wear on you, and it really does boil down to a strong work ethic and a good level of commitment. And I would say some of my previous work experience as a tree planter, as a landscaper, those are good ways to work on that work ethic,
Mm.
to develop that work ethic. So
Yeah, you need a lot of discipline and perseverance for those kind of jobs.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. And then, I mean, a lot of people too. I know there's so many people who get into fisheries biology because they just generally love fish. I wasn't a crazy intense angler growing up, but we still fished quite a bit as kids on the lake, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew enough about fish to get into this discipline. But there's a lot of people who just that's their jumping off point, is they just love fish and they love fishing, and that's exactly how they find their way into it. So yeah, it doesn't hurt. Although I do know some biologists who don't actually like to touch fish, but that's just they're more of the practical, less practical, more theoretical, I would say.
Yeah, I think having a genuine interest is a great place to start. Just like you said, like we need people who really want to protect the environment in these type of roles. Um,
Yep, that's right. And sometimes it can be a battle, so it's important to make sure that you got that reasoning behind it.
yeah, I can see that. Any tips for listeners that are interested in becoming a biologist?
Yeah, I mean, I would say from the start, and this isn't even necessarily for just someone to be a biologist, but I think when I started my degree, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So my one piece of advice for people who are trying to figure out a career path is, don't rush it. If you did take a year to do some other stuff and kind of zone in on exactly what you want to do, I don't think there's any harm in that. the other thing I would say is to pursue a co-op program, because it was something that I didn't personally do, but through my career, I've seen in so many working for so many different companies where they have co-op students, and to me, it's always seemed like such a incredible way to essentially try out. It's like taking a career for a test drive, really. You get to do this sort of snapshot, and you're not locked in for a crazy amount of time, but you really do get to understand how that career feels, how that job feels, and then you can make a decision if you think it's for you.
Hmm.
So I think those are really great ways to first and foremost see if you like it, and then go from there. And I mean, for within DFO specifically too, there's people who started out as co-op students there, and now they've been there for you know multiple decades. So it's a good way to get a foot in the door, career wise, and also just to see if it really fits the bill for you personally.
I think those are both great points. We don't want to be stuck in a career that we end up not liking, and a lot of time we're forced to choose right after high school. You're picking a major already, and yeah, it's a good way to figure out what you actually want to do. Try different paths.
And as you move through, I mean, every step of the way, especially when you're talking about something like going to school and how much a university education costs, it's I think you want to make sure that you're positive that what you're doing is what you can never be 100% positive, but you at least want to make sure you've considered all your options before you jump into something. And yeah, I think that's one thing I would say to younger folks who are trying to figure out a career path is to just take a breather and don't rush into anything, because it's easier to take a year when you're 18 or 19 years old compared to 10 years later when you realize you made the wrong choice and you want to switch it up.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ian.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to move on to a little bit of a different section where I want to learn more about how to be more environmentally conscious as an average everyday citizen. This is more for myself, but as someone who works in the field, is there anything like an average Joe like me can help do to help the environment and marine wildlife?
Yeah, you touched on something as simple as if you're buying seafood or fish, try to buy something that has that ocean wise symbol on it. Try to buy food that's sustainably sourced. I know that seems like a really simple one, but it can be challenging because oftentimes those are the things that might be a bit more expensive than the cheaper farmed salmon or that kind of thing. So yeah, trying to stay away from farmed salmon is good, because those can be a real problem for the for salmon out in the ocean. So there's that, and then I mean, in a more general sense too, just things like recycling, trying to cut back on how
Mm-hmm.
much waste we have. I know that also might seem like a slam dunk, but it's for some people it's not that obvious. We try to just cut back on how much waste we make, and that will reduce how much of those plastics and things end up in the ocean in that Great Pacific garbage patch. And in general, I think too, like you had mentioned earlier as well, just being aware of the waterways in and around, whether it's Vancouver or somewhere even more remote. You never know what might just be living in that creek or in that stream or in that lake, and it's always good to consider what the effect you may be having on that ecosystem, whether it's building some kind of massive structure or throwing your garbage into the water, or just even simple things like if you're refueling your car or a piece of machinery, do it farther away from a water source, so that kind of thing wouldn't make it into the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it's good to be mindful of our surroundings.
Always.
Before we wrap up, I would like to ask you what you like to do for fun.
Yeah, sure thing. So probably no surprise, but I really like to be outside, out and about in nature. So we're kind of getting to the end of the season, but this has been a pretty great summer for lots of outdoor activities and camping. And I'm an avid runner and cyclist, and I was actually training for my first triathlon this summer,
Ooh.
but it got canceled. So I had to I have to wait to next year to do that one. But yeah, biking is sort of my one of my favorite things to do in the summer, and I actually went on a nice big bike trip with some buddies, like bike camping, and that was back in August. So yeah, and then I mean beyond that, I like to play music. I play guitar and banjo and a bunch of other stringed instruments. Love to
Nice.
see live music, although haven't done that in a while. But hopefully this fall we'll have the opportunity to do that again. So yeah, that's those are kind of my main interests outside of just my career.
Cool. Do you have any hikes or camps that favorite campsites that you visited in VC?
Yeah, my go-to is usually heading up the Squamish Valley. It's just these a lot of open rec sites, so you don't have to worry about the provincial BC camping reservation service.
Oh, interesting.
So being able to skip that is always nice. It can get busy, especially during COVID when people didn't have too many other options for travel. But yeah, I've got a group of friends, and we've been going up there for years and years, and it's always a good spot. Let's see what else. I did. So this bike trip I just mentioned this summer was we actually went up and around the Sunshine Coast and then across to Vancouver Island and back down. So the Sunshine Coast I think is a really gorgeous area, and the kind of further you go up, the less busy it gets. So that's a great place to go, and it doesn't involve the long, more expensive ferry over to the island. It's the shorter one that's a bit less busy. So that's a good place to go hang out in the summer.
Cool. I gotta visit those places.
Big time.
Great chat. Thank you for coming on, Ian. It was I learned a lot about what you do and kind of how to protect the environment as an everyday citizen.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Lamont. This has been great.
Thank you to Ian for joining me this week and to you for tuning in. If you want to learn more from Ian, I've shared his LinkedIn below. I'm here to help you discover where you want to go. If you have any questions or feedback, I really appreciate it. And let me know of any other career paths that you're interested in. Until next time.